Hello. Welcome to today's ULU Coffee Break. You can judge a book by its cover with Sarah Glogowski. I am going to hand control on over to her so that she can get started.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Glogowski, and I am the Executive Director of the Finger Lakes Library System. For 15 years, I was a Reader's Advisory Librarian at the Tompkins County Public Library, which is located in Ithaca, New York. And Reader's Advisory is something that I have loved to do. I love to match people up with new books, new authors, and really let people explore. It's the fun part of librarianship. I know it can be scary, but with these tips that we're going to go over today, these tips are going to make you feel more comfortable when you get that dreaded question at your desk. What do I read next? Can you recommend a book to me? So we are going to get started. I do have a slideshow today. And we are going to get started. So when we talk about Reader's Advisory, for me, Reader's Advisory is the act of putting people together with books they love. And think of all of the ways that we do this. We either recommend books that we like reading with each other, we do it socially, either on Goodreads or Facebook, we join book discussion groups, or maybe we just browse in our local libraries. At the library that I worked at, the Tompkins County Public Library, one of my jobs as a Reader's Advisory Librarian was to kind of make books that people wouldn't necessarily think about appealing to them. And we had different slides on TVs throughout our library. The new fiction slide you see over on the right-hand side would be something that we would change out every week. We also used book letters, which is a great tool for customizing your own book lists. So say for the holidays coming up, we would do a holiday book list, or thrillers for Halloween. So we would do a lot of recommended reading lists online. We also had an active web presence on our website. I also did a blog a number of years ago where I read 100 books in a year and did individual reviews on them. So why did we do this? Well, we really wanted people to just come in, to browse, to find different things that they wanted to read. And a lot of times when you're at your reference desk or your circulation desk and you're checking someone out, you're answering a reference question, and you get that question, I've read all of John Grisham's books. I really want another legal thriller. And if you feel that you don't have the training, or you didn't go to school or take a class in Reader's Advisory, these next slides that we're going to go over will give you some clues. And I just want to mention too, while this works in a library and from browsing, it's also if you're in a store, if you're in a bookstore, if you're in a grocery store that sells books, if you're in a Target that sells books, if you're in an airport and needs something to read. It also works for e-content, for ebooks and e-audiobooks, because if you think about it, the way you search for ebooks, if you use a system like Overdrive or something similar to Overdrive, you also see the covers of the books. And the covers offer a lot of tips and clues, not just for library staff, but for readers that give you an idea of the books and authors themselves. So we're going to start by looking at some covers of books. And I have two covers right here. And as you can see, the first thing that you notice on these covers is the author's name. It's very large. The font size is large. In fact, in the Stephen King book in my library, the barcode was actually covering the title of the book. Readers know names of well-known authors. They generally don't care what the title is. If they are a fan of that author, they're going to grab that book regardless because it's the newest Stephen King book. So if an author is well-known, established, has done very well in sales, the larger their name is on the book. The title is not really necessary for those avid readers. Let's look at another example. Here we see two books that the title is more prominent. The author's name.
I'm sorry, Sarah. You're going to need to go over to the side and click on the screen share. You haven't done that yet.
Oh, hold on one second. Let me see. Now, can
There
you
you
see
go.
it? Okay.
Yep, you might want to F5.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So here is the reader's advisory slide that I talked about. And then the author's name, the Stephen King, the Elizabeth George, the very prominent font for the author's name. Here we have a very prominent title instead of an author's name. So The Paris Wife, The Tiger's Wife. These were books by first-time authors. So the title will be more prominent. So the lesser known author, the title is more prominent on the cover. Both of these books did very well. Taya is actually a very young writer, and she won the National Book Award for this title. So in subsequent books, her name will become more prominent, just like the Paris Wife's author. So as they increase sales, they get better reviews in journals and newspapers, their names will become more prominent on the titles. Now, for actual books, I'm going to start with mysteries, just because mysteries are some of the most checked out books that are in public libraries today. And I'm going to start with cozies. And cozies actually encompass a wide range of different types of mysteries. When you think of cozies, there are cooking mysteries, there are, let's say, knitting mysteries, crossword puzzle mysteries. We have, this is a series, the Susan Wittig Elberg. She does a couple of series. This happens to be a Beatrice Potter series. Cozies, while a murder has taken place, it is not key to the telling of the story. There is usually not a lot of blood. There's usually not a lot of violence. They are often set in small towns. They often have a female sleuth that is trying to solve the mystery. So not a lot of blood, not a lot of sex, not a lot of swearing. You will see on covers of cozies, if someone comes up and say they want a nice mystery, a nice cozy mystery, look for things such as food, animals, knitting, things of that nature. These will be slower, gentler paced mysteries. Historical fiction is also very prominent in a lot of the mysteries. To tell historical mysteries, if someone comes up to you and says, I really want a historical mystery, I really like reading historical mysteries, look for clues such as pictures of cobblestone streets, the dress, we see the top hat, the cape, the women's dressing, gas lighting. All of these will lend to the historical blend of it. So look at the covers, see if you see anything that could give you historical clues to this. Dark mysteries. These are often violent. They usually describe the murder mystery in detail. They usually sometimes have swearing involved. They have sometimes just a darker theme to it. We see the slashing on The Night Season by Chelsea Clane, the barbed wire of the Karen Slaughter, the lost shoe of maybe a woman running away. Stuart McBride is a popular Scottish mystery writer, very, very dark. There are clues on here that tell you the darkness. These are usually more graphic in nature. I've included Scandinavian mysteries in the slideshow just because The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is extremely popular, and with the new release coming out, the series is continuing. At least in my library, Scandinavian mysteries are still very popular. Scandinavian mysteries rely a lot on setting, and you will often see setting involved in the pictures of the book. They usually have blue tones for winter, yellow or orange or red tones for summer. A lot of Scandinavian mysteries take place place either in the darkness of winter or the never-ending sunlight of the summer, and you will often see that depicted on the covers of the books. Thrillers, one of our most popular genres. When you think of thrillers, they're plot-driven, they're gripping, they're professional-based. Thrillers can incorporate legal thrillers, medical thrillers, spy thrillers, and art thrillers. Think of the Da Vinci Code. Think of the Daniel Silvas. For legal thrillers, you will often see the scales of justice, maybe a courtroom, a gavel on there. Medical thrillers, Robin Cook is a very well-known author. You'll see ambulance, maybe a syringe, a hospital hallway. When you think of thrillers, the protagonist is usually placed in jeopardy. They pull the readers in just a few pages. Oftentimes, the chapters are only 2 to 3 pages long. Thrillers are usually also taking place during a short period of time, usually 24 hours or just a couple of days. They're also cinematic or very movie-like. Suspense is also very similar to thrillers. You have that protagonist versus antagonist of the book. They're full of tension. They're very fast-paced also, but the chapters are a little bit longer than those 2 to 3 pages in thrillers. They're also told from a threatened point of view. And in suspense, that is a little bit different than thrillers, the suspense books usually have a resolved ending. Inspirational fiction might be popular at your library. A lot of times people come in and say they want a clean read. There are often religious-based. They do not have swearing. They do not have violence. They do not have sex. Think of your Amish books, your Philip Gullys. These are very popular for older readers and sometimes female readers. I've also included women's fictions. We have the Jodi Picots. For titles, look for things such as jewelry, women's shoes. You'll often see a picture of a woman on there. A lot of times without her head, if you notice that. That's a running joke for Reader's Advisory librarians. But this just gives you an idea for women's fiction. And street lit has grown over the past couple of years, very popular in my library, even though it's an urban library. Street lit, urban fiction, often talks about the music industry, hip hop, gangs, very sexual, very violence usually based, a lot of usually very urban, gritty type of covers. And now we're going to go into fantasy. For fantasy, a lot of people can't tell the difference sometimes between fantasy and science fiction. For fantasy, books are about magic, the good versus evil, the light versus dark. The characters are clearly defined as good and bad, and often attain magical gifts, and the story often explores ways to discover one's own potential, magical or otherwise. When you look to see the difference between a fantasy or a science fiction books, fantasy will have mythical creatures on them, dragons, unicorns, elves, wizards, swords. The story may be based on a myth or a legend. The start may be slow because the author has to set the scene, and it often involves a large group of characters in a strange world. They are usually also part of a series. I've included urban fantasy. We have our werewolves. We have our vampires. This is a growing field, especially after True Blood came out in book and also on HBO. For science fiction, it's speculative fiction, usually set in the future, exploring moral, social, intellectual, philosophical, and ethical questions. The setting is crucial and evokes otherness of time, place, and/or reality. Its technical and scientific detail is extremely important to the story. The characters are usually secondary to issues and the atmosphere of the story. Because of the complexity of writing another world, often authors often write series. So if you see like a spaceship, think Star Wars, Star Trek, that's going to be your science fiction. Another outpost of this is steampunk, which is a new subgenre of science fiction, or it can be actually fantasy. Involves a setting where steam power is still used. Think Victoria, England, to power wildly creative and futuristic devices like a computer. They often show Victorian fashion or culture or architect on the cover of them. And last, we have romance books. And my key is, and people always chuckle about this, there are 3 different colors mainly for romance books. If you have a white cover, there's going to be not a lot of sex in there. Maybe chaste kissing, there's romance, but not sex. As you go up in color, the pinks, the yellows, a little more steamy for romance. And finally, when you get to the end, the red covers. For those covers, there's going to be often a lot of graphic sex. So as you go up in the color scale from white, pink, and red, you can tell the level of steaminess of a romance novel. I always like to say when I was doing this demonstration in my library with actual books, there were a lot of white books on my bookshelves and not a lot of red. So I think that said a lot about our readers. But as you can tell from things that we've gone over today, there are many clues of the covers of books that will tell you and give you hints. So this was just kind of an overview of how we as librarians do this. If you're going in and just browsing the shelves yourself or helping someone, I'm hoping that some of these little tips that you learned will not make you so afraid to either recommend something, suggest someone, or try something different when you read your next book. I've included my contact information. This is my email address and also my phone number. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me in any way, and I would be happy to help you. So I would like to thank you at this point. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that you feel more comfortable in your reader's advisory skills these days because of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming and doing this coffee break. Thank you for watching. If you are watching, then you can do what we usually do and click my coffee cup to subscribe to the channel to get all of the rest of the awesome coffee breaks. And if you want to help support ULU and help us keep our coffee breaks and our conference and all the awesome programming we do going, you can click the donate link down in the description. So thanks, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.